And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you came back because you wanted more. That was brilliant. That was a fantastic move because we have a lot more for you. Now, why do we have so much more for you? Because this is the podcast. It's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And our guest today is a podcaster. You figured it out. You cracked the code. You really are brilliant. Folks, this is the place where we all come together to raise each other up, and this is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So let's get sailing and bring in our awesome guest we have today. I have had the privilege of interviewing this fantastic lady on another podcast. I'm glad we have her on this one so that all of you can hear her and her story. She is an author. She's written three books: The Right Way to Say Goodbye, and Then My Life Happened, and her novella Phobia. They're all out there. They're awesome. You got to check them out. She's a wife. She's a mom. She's a writer. She's a podcaster. Her podcast is Honest Christian Conversations, which is fantastic. You got to check that out too. And she is the prodigal child, saved by God's undeserved grace. And I'm going to let her tell you what that is all about as we get into her and her story. Please welcome to the show, Anna Murby. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Rory, for having me on. And you've got some good dad gems right there. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that.
I have one.
That
What's
was
that?
dad gems, just like the corny but funny, awesome type of like just the quick wit. Like I'm used to it. I like it. So
Oh, okay. Well, we're starting off with a compliment. That's awesome. She's probably going to send me an invoice for that later on. So I'm just letting you know. That's awesome. No. All right, Anna. Hey, I just kind of laid some things out. I know we got a lot to talk about, and I love your podcast and what you're doing. But before we get into all that, just kind of give everybody a brief idea. Who is Anna Murby? What are you about, and kind of what brought you to all of this?
yeah, well, I grew up a Christian or quote unquote Christian. For most of my life, I would say I was a Christian in name only. And yeah, I knew everything because I went to Christian schools. I went to church all the time, sometimes more than once. I memorized verses. I did all the stuff that you need to, quote unquote, to be a Christian, but I never felt like I was an actual Christian. I always worried, did I do enough today? Is God going to love me? If I died today, would I go to heaven? Just always had that in the back of my mind. If I did anything wrong, I felt extra guilty because I'm like, I am sure God's not going to let me go to heaven now. And no matter what I did, I never felt like it was good enough. So I went through a period of time in my early 20s after going through my first divorce, and I was just done with God, with my family, putting on pressures, whether they knew it or not, of making me feel like I had to be the best or the good one. And I just completely 180 started doing whatever I thought I wanted to do. And it was not good. I binge drinked for a long, like, I think 9 months. And I slept around with people. I just did a whole bunch of terrible things that I knew were wrong because I grew up a Christian. I knew what the Bible said about these things, and yet I still did it. But I was also warring within myself because I knew it was wrong and I didn't really want to do these things, but I couldn't stop because I wanted to be in control of my life. So at some point, I stopped with all of that, got married a second time, moved to Connecticut from California, where I was born. And I still wasn't following Christ, so I wasn't really making good choices. And then 2 years later, my husband said he was done. He wanted to get a divorce, and he left me with two kids. That's when I came back to Christ. And from that point on, I have not given up on him. He has not given up on me. He had plenty of opportunities to do so, and he would have been right to do so because of what I had done. But he had been faithful to me and he told me, trust me to take care of you. And that's what I did. And he has not let me down since. I have been blessed that for the last almost 18 years straight, I've been able to be a stay at home mom. No matter what the circumstances, I've been able to be home taking care of my kids. So he has definitely gone above and beyond anything I deserve to take care of me. And because of that, I wanted to devote everything that I am, everything I do, to making sure that I give him the glory for it. And I started a podcast once, but I didn't stick with it because I had gotten a little depressed, I guess, because it wasn't growing the way I wanted it to, but I wasn't consistent with it. I had a lot of filler words that I was using. It just wasn't great content. I didn't know what I wanted to talk about. I didn't put God first in what I was trying to do. So I kind of abandoned that in 2019 after I don't even know how long. It wasn't even a year that I had kept that one around. I was just too self-focused. But there were many different things that I tried to do for God that I wanted to do for God or said that I wanted to do for God. But the more I thought about it, it wasn't for God, it was for me saying that I wanted to do it for God. So I just kind of stopped doing things because God just made it very clear that I needed to just stop doing things. And I just sat in this place of feeling like, well, what am I supposed to do now? Am I just a mom? Am I just a wife? And I had battled with that really hard. It was hard for me to see myself as I'm a mom and a wife, and that is my first calling. Eventually, I talked with my pastor about it, and he said, you're not just those things. That is your calling. That is the ministry that God has for you. And once you do that, then you can have other ministries because then you've got it right. And from that point on, I started realizing that it's not a burden to be a mom and a wife. This is my calling and I need to do my best with it. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. I still have so much room to grow, but I have also grown a lot since that point. And then I've been blessed to be able to have this podcast that I have now, Honest Christian Conversations. I have written 3 books. I'm still working on some other books, but I'm allowing God to, I don't even want to say I'm allowing because he doesn't need my permission, but for lack of better thought process, I allowed him to take over the things that I wanted to do rather than me being in charge because I had seen what happens when I'm in charge and it's not very cool. So I've relinquished and said, you know what? I'm your co host. You're the host. Whatever we do with this podcast, you're going to be the one who dictates that. I don't want to because it's not going to succeed if I do it. People will be able to smell that a mile away. And same with my writing. I'm always allowing him to do the writing. If I get in a place where I just feel like I'm in a funk and I don't know what to write about or I'm not feeling like writing, I don't put so much pressure on myself that I have to continue writing every single day and just muscle through that. I just take a step back and say, okay, well, maybe there's something else I should be doing in the meantime, and the ideas will come when they come. I've gotten less out of it's about me and what I want in my timing. And I've realized I need to rest in God and allow Him to do what He has to do in me. Otherwise, whatever I try to do is just going to be poo poo if I don't do it right.
Nice. All right. I mean, those are big realizations to come to, as you
Hmm.
go through your life. We're definitely going to talk about the podcast, here, but your books that you wrote. I mean, three
Hmm.
books is a great accomplishment for anybody to put up. I mean, you say it like it's no big deal. Yeah, so I wrote 3 books. And I'm like, you
Uh,
you wrote the first one you wrote when you were what, 17? The
yeah,
novella,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
tell everybody about your books. What are they? What are they about?
Well, the novella is written, obviously, I was a Christian, but at that point I was in name only. So I used to be really into thriller type material and mystery movies. I still like mystery movies, but I don't watch a lot of the dark stuff anymore. It just messes with my brain and everything, and I just don't do it anymore. But I used to be really into that. And I also used to really like the rom-coms, even though I used to make fun of it because I thought it was cheesy. And it's like, there's no way that this is real. Nobody's ever going to love me that way. Like bitter is what it was. It
Yeah.
was a bitter young teenager because the only person I had ever tried to tell how much I cared about them, rejected me my senior year. So that just kind of set off a trajectory of being an angry 17-year-old. And I did not have a good senior year. I couldn't wait to get out of school. That's how terrible it was. And it showed in my writing. I had friends, and then we moved to a smaller place, and then something happened, and my friends just kind of dispersed. I don't know if it was because God was trying to show me the art of creative writing as to why everything just kind of happened the way that it did and when it did, like if it was meant to be that way, or if it was just all these circumstances just happened to come up at the same time. But it's like we moved to a smaller house. A lot of my friends just kind of disappeared. I was heartbroken because someone rejected me, like bitter, angry, all these things. It was just bottled up right there within me. And I had a computer. I had a real dinosaur computer. It was a laptop, a heavy one, but you could screw in a second base. I forget what it was. I motherboard or something. I don't know. I used to call it the mothership because this thing was huge. And I loved it because I started writing. I wrote how I felt. I wrote what I wanted. I wanted a relationship. I wanted to be loved like what I saw in the movies. I wanted to show people that I'm creative. I wrote because I wanted people to see how awesome I was. This is what I did when I was 17. But what 17-year-old doesn't feel that way? But that's just how I wrote the story. And it's not the greatest work. Again, I was 17, but it's it's great emotional material. It gives you a really good idea of how teens think and how teens struggle with certain things. And perhaps what I wrote was a bit of a metaphor. Perhaps it was what I wrote is dark for a reason because that's how I felt inside was dark. And I just didn't know how to tell anybody because I didn't want them to know I had problems. And I just let everything out in my story. And I've always been that way with all my writing. I am very emotional and I put myself into the stories. I put my heart into the stories. And that's pretty much what I did with Phobia. And I didn't release it until just now because I never thought about releasing it. But someone at my church said something and it made me think about it, that maybe some teenagers need to hear it now. They need to know that someone can relate to how they feel. And that's why I decided to do it. And I didn't change anything with it. I changed some grammar because there were some grammar issues. But aside from that, I didn't change the storyline at all. I tried. I really did try, but that's where I feel like God was like, no, no, just leave it alone. It's fine. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not fine because I'm a perfectionist. But I really felt like it just needed to be in its most purest form in order for teens to understand it and accept it. So that's what I did about phobia. My first novel, The Right Way to Say Goodbye, I wrote that after going through my second divorce and trying to save the marriage and everything. It wasn't written specifically like it was a tale of what I went through because it's not quite the same, but I got the inspiration from what I went through and my main character, he goes through that trying to save his marriage. So, yeah, there was definitely a lot of emotion while I was writing that. And the only reason it took me 5 years to write it as opposed to a lot less is because that was during the time where I was starting to realize I need to allow God the space to work his word into what I'm trying to say. I was too busy trying to do what I wanted to do, and I kept getting writer's block in the same exact area. It all like clockwork. I could go for months writing, be fine. And then when I got to that specific part, writer's block. Could not get past, did not know how to get past. No matter how many times I changed the whole story plot, nothing, like nothing. Just when I got to that part there, I was like, okay, I don't know what God's trying to do, but I'm just going to back off for a while. So I did. And there was a whole series of events that happened to get me back to where I realized what my problem was is the location of where I had the story. I had it set in California where my old life used to be, where I was bitter and angry that God wouldn't allow me to go back after my second divorce because I wanted to be with my family. I wanted my kids to be with their grandparents and all this stuff. So I was really bitter and angry. And I had based the story in California. But after a situation happened, after visiting California for the last time, I realized that my life was no longer there. My life was now in Connecticut, and I needed to accept that. So once I did, the story started flowing, and then I was able to get it out. I wish I had learned it a lot earlier than 5 years, but you know, I'm hard headed. So,
And that brings us to, and then my life happened, right?
yes, uh, I got overzealous after the first one was published and everything. You know how people get sometimes they, puffed up. They're like, ooh, I got one. I probably got another one in me. And this was a story that had been brewing in my mind for a while, something I wanted to do this, but I wasn't sure what to do. And I was driving to Walmart one time and I was listening to techno music because that's the kind of music I enjoy listening to. And I got to thinking about one of my favorite DJs who had committed suicide years ago, Avicii. And I thought about how sad that was because I was listening to his song Fade into Darkness. And whenever I hear that, it just kind of breaks my heart because I think of him being sad and being stuck in darkness. And that's just made me really sad. So then I started thinking of an idea of having a really young and successful DJ who is going through a struggle. He's not telling anyone about it, but he's stuck on drugs and women and drinking. And he's just done with life and he just wants to end it all. And then something happens. He ends up not doing it. He runs away from his life and completely disconnects, meets a young missionary girl that he starts falling for while he's hiding out. And she helps him, get sober and talks to him about God. And it's really an emotional roller coaster of a story. But because I rushed it, that's what I feel is that I rushed it. I'm definitely planning on republishing it with a little more not so, ooh, look at me, I'm such a great writer kind of attitude with the tips and things that I've learned about. I do want to do that. It's just been so busy. But I loved writing this story so much. It has a lot of my heart. It has a lot of my interests and I cried several times writing it because I could just feel my characters. I always feel my characters. I feel what they're going through because I'm putting in a part of myself and what either I was feeling at that time or what I am feeling. So they're very emotionally charged, in my opinion. And if someone's into that, they definitely would love the stories.
Nice. Nice. And these are all available
On
on your,
Amazon.
okay,
Yeah.
all on
I mean,
Amazon.
you can also go onto my website, Honest Christian Conversations. There's a navigation up top. It says books. You just click on that and it'll show you all of them and take you most likely to Amazon. But it's just more central because it's right there and you don't have to go searching for it. So
Nice. Nice. Now, the last book came out when?
Phobia is the last one that I published, and that came out, I think, earlier this year.
Okay.
Can't remember what date or
And the
anything like that, but
podcast
yeah.
started in 2024?
No, I started podcasting altogether in 2019. I didn't do the first one for too long, and
Right.
then this one started. It started after COVID. I probably, yeah, it's been about a year and a half.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah, I didn't start it right away. I didn't want to start another one because I felt burnt by the other one and I was like, what am I going to
Gotcha.
talk about?
And you run yours kind of unique on your podcast because you run seasons, but it
Hmm.
doesn't look like just, I mean, I went through your podcast obviously and, looked at a bunch of stuff and listened to a bunch of episodes, but it,
Yeah.
it, it looks as though you don't take a break or much of one. In between your seasons, you kind of like keep on rolling, right?
Well, that's what it looks like, but I do take breaks actually. Like my summer series that I just did where I did the tribute to masculinity, that was
Yeah.
all on airplane. That was all on autopilot. Those were already set up. I the last interview I recorded before that was in May. And some of those interviews that are coming out now I had recorded back in January of this year. I I am terrible with time management for various reasons. I know, right? And the only reason they
Oh,
came out so late is because at some point I thought in my heart that I really wanted to do a tribute to masculinity during the summertime around Father's Day and everything to highlight men because they've been getting beaten down so much by culture and everything. And I was like, I really want to do this. So I let all the women know who were are now coming out. I had let them know earlier that I was planning on doing this and they were all on board with it. So that's the only reason why their content
wow.
from back and then is coming out now. But I do take breaks and it's very healthy for me because at first when I started this podcast, the Honest Christian Conversations podcast, it had a different name. And you can find that out in season 1. I think a couple of the episodes I have it, but I just recently tweaked it and it's not in every single episode so people don't get confused. But it had a different name, and I still did the same thing I did with my first podcast. It wasn't making any sense. You couldn't tell what it was about. The art was very clever and beautiful because it just fit with what I was going for. But the problem was is that it fit in other categories as well, and no one would have known
Mm,
what it
okay.
actually was about. So that was a problem. And just I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to promote. I was getting the same feeling that I did with my first podcast. That was frustrating for me. I had no direction. I wasn't consistent. I didn't know what to talk about. So I was getting frustrated. I was about to pod fade this one away as well. And before my 40th birthday in May, I went roller skating with one of my kids for a birthday party for one of her friends. I hadn't rollerbladed since high school. I thought I had semi recently while one of my kids was still bored and everything, but apparently I was wrong. I was just walking on the rink. So she didn't really know how to skate either, and she was nervous about it. So I went with her, and we're skating, we're doing well. We went one lap and we went close to a second lap, and she's like, I'm done. I don't want to do anymore. Okay. So we're about to get off after the second lap, and she starts freaking out because she's wiggling a little more, but she has one of those walker things, but she's freaking out about it. And I went to try to help her, and I slipped and I fell and I broke my elbow. It was bad. And I was like, oh man, this is terrible.
Oh my gosh.
But that, obviously I wasn't able to do any podcasting or anything about that. That was the last thing on my mind, but I had already decided I was not going to continue anyways. What's the point? Nobody's listening. I don't know what I'm doing. I was just Debbie Downer about it. And it was around summertime that it happened. And then Alex Sanfilippo from Podmatch emailed me, and I have gotten emails from people like, "Oh, I can give you this many views and that many views," and I hated getting those. It's like, no, you can't. I can't get me those. There's no way you can. So when I saw his email telling me that I had a great show, and I'm reading this and I'm reacting in the meantime, and he's like, "You have a great show." I was like, Psh, "You haven't listened to this. What are you talking about?" Like I was just roasting myself. And then I read the rest of it. He said who he was, what he was coming from, what he wanted me to do, take the quiz. And I was like, oh, this feels scammy. Like if I push this button, he's going to get all my information. That's just what I felt like. So I looked him up like I usually do and looked on Google and I saw he looked legit. I'm like, okay, I'll give it a whirl when I come back. So I messaged him back and said, I'll do it when I come back from my vacation. I'm with my family right now. So then I did in July. I took the quiz that they had for it realized what kind of podcaster I was, realized I wasn't doing a lot of the things that I should have been doing if I wanted to be even semi-successful. So I was like, okay, maybe I've been doing this wrong. I was like, I'll admit it. It's me. So I got hooked up with Podmatch, started doing some stuff so I could, do better. Alex, and his wife, Alicia, helped me with my podcast cover. They say we didn't do anything, but they helped give me tips and I showed them the final thing and they said it looks amazing. So I did it by myself, but I don't like to say I did it by myself because if they had not given me any information on why I should change mine. And if I didn't watch all the videos he provides on Podmatch, I wouldn't have understood why I needed to make it simple and easy for people to understand what they're going to get. Because I'm uber creative and sometimes you just can't be like that. So that was one of my hangups. And time management was another one, planning everything out. So I had to figure out how am I going to do that. And through my season 3, that's when I realized I got to do better with how I plan my guesting because I have a lot of episodes that were finished for season 4. They were like finished within 3 months and they weren't coming out for later in the year. And I felt bad. I'm like, I don't want the people to feel like I'm not going to release their episode. So I've been working on how am I going to get better with doing it closer. It it's just for me. I can't tell because I know I need to edit. I got to do all these things. So I'm like, okay, well, if I got to do all these things, how much time am I going to need to do all these things? I don't want to be stressed. So, what I did is I came up with theme weeks, which is something I got from another podcast about writing. They have theme weeks like this day they devote to doing laundry. This day they devote to I'm only going to write. This day, that kind of stuff. And I liked the idea because I need structure. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. This will be the days that I do my interviewing. I will only have 2 on one day, and then I'll have recording on this day, practicing my Russian, writing on this day, doing my chores, because I felt like I was also not being the mom and the wife that I needed to be because I was trying to do everything. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to devote those things to days, and maybe that'll help me. And it has so far. So.
I was the whole time you were telling your story, I'm like, okay, we're gonna hear it. So what changed, right? What went from nobody's listening, blah blah blah. So it was Alex and his wife that changed for you.
Yeah,
That interaction
pod
turned you
match
around.
definitely. Yeah, it helped me grow not just as a podcaster but as a Christian, which I didn't
Wow.
think would be possible from a company that devotes themselves to podcasting. But because they're so full of you're serving people, this is how we serve. That's always what they talk about is we're serving, we're doing this, we get to do this. It changed my mindset of if I can't be consistent in my relationship with God, how can I do that in podcasting? If I think I can do it in podcasting, then I should be able to be consistent with my relationship with God as well. And then, I'd get convicted by listening to one of the events that they had, and I'd feel inside, like recently they just did one in, I think it was July, and one of the people was talking about, caring about the listeners you already have. And that was something that I had already been thinking, how am I going to do this? I want to do this. I know that there's people listening consistently and I want to be there for them. Because sometimes I'll email the people who send me requests, like prayer requests. I will email them back later and, just ask them, how are things going? Is there anything new I can pray for? How's the situation going? But I hadn't been doing it consistently. And I wanted to be consistent for the people who I know are consistently there for me. So when I listened to that episode where he was talking about that, I just felt major conviction, but I also got some tips on how I could work on that. So that's one of the reasons why I dropped a lot of my social media as well, is because I felt super thin and stretched and I wanted to be there for the people who matter most. And most of them seem to be on Facebook. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to dive into Facebook and be my best version of myself on there as I can. And then once I quote unquote master that, then I can try a different platform. But yeah, I learned a lot about who I am, what kind of person I need to be if I want to be a better believer and practice what I preach, and yeah, to be a better podcaster. So Podmatch has definitely helped me a lot, and it certainly saved the podcast so from utter destruction.
That's great. I love Alex, and I love the Podmatch community. It's
Yeah,
really awesome.
yeah.
So yeah, was fortunate to have him on my Power Man show, and we had that
Hmm.
discussion. So
Yeah, I actually
very
got to
cool.
interview him in season 3,
I
and
saw that.
yeah, so it looks like I don't take breaks, but I do. And the only reason I have seasons rather than just consistently just whatever, it's easier on my brain, I guess. I don't know. Or I felt like it needed to be. I really don't have a reason why I went for seasons, but I just kind of like it. It gives me a, okay, we're done here, so we're going to transition to this kind of a thing. And it just gives my brain this chance to say, okay, are we going to continue with it this way or do we need to grow in some other way?
Yeah.
So I think that's why I have the seasons, because it just feels like a hard stop for me to take a break and say, okay, what should we do?
No,
Is
I
this
like it
worth it
because
or not?
yeah, it's like regular maintenance in your car. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to go here and then I'm going to stop and we're going to take care of things and we're going to refuel and we're going to, check the route and find out if we're good. Okay, we are. Well, let's keep on going.
Yeah.
Or we're not. Let's change it. So I
Yeah.
get it. Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, it's one of the things I love about podcasting is there's no rules.
Yeah.
We're making the
Yep.
rules up as we go. So,
Yep.
I say this all the time.
Yep.
So if it's your podcast, you can do whatever you want to do.
Yep.
And I'm glad. About how many episodes do you have now altogether?
Ooh, I have no idea. I think I'm about to hit. Ooh, I can actually look. Let me see.
Let's
I
say I didn't
can't
go through and
remember.
count them all because you did quite a few.
I know.
So,
I don't even do that
and you don't
either.
number them. So I
I
was like,
don't think
okay,
I
well,
could.
I can't cheat.
I am about 49% away from having 2,500 downloads, and I am 92% away from having 75 episodes, according to Buzzsprout. That's the only way I know because there's
You
no
went to
way I would count
stats.
either.
Oh my goodness. All right. So you have like 50, 60 episodes, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
good deal. All right. Perfect. That's kind of what I was guessing with my
I
flip,
know.
I do the
Yeah.
Spotify flip.
I scroll through it. It's
Right.
like, wow, I have a lot. That's what I would have
So
said is I have a lot. I was like, no,
good
I'll be
enough.
kind and I'll give him some numbers.
Good enough. You answered a bunch of questions that I do ask folks in terms of promotion. You focus down on Facebook, and I see there all the time. I mean, I see your
Hmm.
stuff almost literally daily. It's really cool. But the I've listened to several of your episodes. You haven't monetized anything. It doesn't sound like.
No. Uh,
What a look on your face right now. That was like, why did you ask me this question?
no, no, it's a love-hate relationship, and the only reason is because I feel people can smell when you're desperate for money. And I wouldn't say I'm desperate for money. As I've said, God provides for everything, but I would
Yeah.
like to help my husband out, with some bills now and then. And I don't want to come across as somebody who's trying to sell you something, like
Mm,
so I haven't done that, but also because on Buzzsprout, I know you have to have a certain amount of downloads, I think like on a week or episodes, and I guess I just don't have that yet. I do have the store that I have for the podcast that I do promote inside the episodes, but I'm just trying to find a happy medium with how to do that. I may be starting to be an affiliate for a health product. So, future episodes might have some information about that. Uh, but yeah, it's just something that hasn't been on my mind because I don't want to focus on it too much. I know that if I do, then I'm going to be too focused on it and then it'll show in my content that that's where my aim is. And I don't ever want it to be that way. And plus, I'm just afraid that if I do some sort of the ads where they just randomly come in your episode, I'm
Yeah.
afraid it's going to be something that does not line up anywhere with what I'm doing here.
Right.
And then someone's
Yeah.
going to say something. I'm like, hey, that wasn't me.
Always a fear. Whenever you have especially a faith-based show, but whenever you have any kind
Yeah.
of, particular thing that you're talking about and you have to worry about your alignment, you always have to worry about the drop-in ads for sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I get that. I really do. Now, I didn't hear any AI in your stuff. Or do you use AI in some capacity, maybe writing show notes or something, or do you stay away from
Uh,
that?
I do use a little AI for my show notes and my blogs that I have for the podcast. I have noticed that they do tend to be repetitive with the way that they start and everything. Like they just always look scripted. So I went back to season 3 because that's where I realized that they look really scripted. So I went back and I tried to put my own flair into it, like how I would actually talk, because
Hmm.
anyone who knows me, if they read the blog, would be like, this doesn't sound like something she'd say. So I try to go back and I'll fix the grammar up and I'll, put my own touches into it. I got to work harder on it, but I don't like to just use it and just, put it out there just as is because I don't want to be like that. I feel like if I notice it, someone else is going to notice it who's really focused. But I also do use my Riverside to its full potential, and it helps me clear up the audio, like the background audio. I love their studio recording sound that they make when you just click the button and it'll fix your volume of your voice and it'll sound like you're in an actual studio. And I love that because I'm not in an actual studio. And sometimes my kids are screaming in the back. And it's like, well, I can't have that.
All right. Okay. I love it. Hey, very fair. Very fair. Um, okay. Let me ask you this, and no names, of course. Okay. Let's protect the innocent here.
Yep.
Um, best and worst. Best
Mm.
and worst episodes. What comes to mind like boom?
Best in terms of what I think is best or what's done the
We're
best?
making our
Because
own
those
rules.
could be two
We're
different
making our own
things.
rules. If you
If you
need two
go
different answers,
off
go ahead.
of if you go off of what's best, a lot of people liked what I was doing in season 4, where I deep dived into a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
I know one of the episodes I did talked a lot about The Chosen, that one I did by myself. And I know some people liked that I did a deep dive by myself and like a solo episode because some people like hearing me do solo episodes and some like the overall talking with guests.
Right.
But if you want my personal favorites, I have one of them hasn't come out yet. Depending on when this episode comes out, it may already be out. But as of right now, while we're recording, it's not out yet, but it will be in a matter of weeks. And I loved filming that episode. She made me laugh so hard. And we were talking about the most awkward and hard stuff to talk about. We were talking about the idea of sexual abuse and sexual addiction, but she has so much life in her. You can see how God has transformed her, and I loved hearing her story, and it filled my heart so much just to talk to her. And in terms of worst, there is one I haven't released yet, and I'm still trying to figure out if I'm going to. Maybe it'll just be an episode that I release later. And it's not necessarily because it was a bad conversation. I'm just wondering if it was because neither of us were prepared enough for it, and also because the person doesn't seem to be continuing with their podcast of which we were discussing, and I don't want to release something and promote something that is not being done, if that makes sense, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
Like, I don't think they've done anything since the episode was recorded, and I don't want to bring people's attention to something that the person is not doing. And I'm like, well, it'll
Fair.
be an episode if I absolutely need one in a quick decision, something bad happens and I need to take a break and I don't have anything, then I'll release it because I have everything done already. It's edited, it's recorded, it's all out there ready. I just haven't released it yet because I just didn't feel it. And I don't feel that way a lot about certain episodes. I think I've only felt that way maybe about two, and one of them I am still releasing because I know it'll bless somebody at some point. But this one I just wasn't feeling that I should at all. And it's no shade to the person at all because I enjoyed the conversation we had. And maybe it's just not meant to be shared with everybody. Maybe it was just for us. So.
Sure. As I look at kind of, your body of work here, you've definitely been able to kind of express yourself through your writing, and be very creative there and still get these messages out. So why podcasting? What was it about podcasting that said, "Hey, Anna, over here. This is what you need to be doing."
Well, I'm very introverted, so for me to even want to do it is really funny. I don't like to talk to random strangers, which is also really funny that I have guests on. But I've made some really good friends since
Okay,
doing this, you being one of them. And I've had some other people on my podcast where they're just really good friends. I have a guest who actually was on my podcast once. We don't live that far away from each other, so we see each other often, and I love her to death. She's I would consider her one of my best friends now.
cool.
And I was the first interview she ever did as well. And it just means so much to me, the people that I've met doing this. So I can't say that I would never have done this. I love doing it. But it is funny to think of because I was a very shy person and didn't like to talk to people, don't want to make waves, don't want to upset anybody, anything like that. So during the pandemic, I started having an awakening in my mind to, the government's not telling us the truth, the medical department's not telling us the truth, all these things. Like I was learning a whole bunch of different things. And at the same time, I was also hearing about all these Christian artists that I knew from back in the day that I listened to that I quote unquote thought were safe. And they were turning away from God. And I'm like, what is going on here? And I'd hear that they're falling in the ministry, they're doing things wrong, they don't love God anymore, they're, supporting LGBTQ, like all these things. It just wrecked me. I mean, the learning that the government was, not what we thought it was not shocking. It was more validating because I had already, had my conspiracy theories and they were just coming true at this point.
Right.
With the medical system, it was kind of a little bit of both, where it's like, well, duh, I kind of already knew that. But at the same time, I was learning on a deeper level just how corrupt it was. And that blew my mind. But learning about it from a Christian perspective and how the Christian scene has also been infiltrated in certain ways really wrecked me. And I did not know what to do with it. I had all this information. I wanted to share it with as many people as possible, but I just didn't know what to do. And then at some point, I remembered, hey, why don't you make a podcast? It's easy. You can share the gospel with everybody. It's more passive. If someone rejects it, all they're doing is just not listening. You don't have to know. Maybe they might say something to you or something, but it just seemed like it made more sense because I do sometimes have things that I want to say, but I'm not going to say it to you in person because that's scary to me. We're not, I just can't do that. So I was like, well, I'm just going to try to do this and we'll figure it out. And, like I said, the first season was very sporadic still because I didn't really know what direction I wanted to take the podcast in. I just knew that I wanted to share the gospel. I had things I wanted to say to people. So I just went with that. But as I was going through all my COVID experiences and realizing all these different things, I just had this deep burden that I needed people to realize that Christian music and things like that might not be as safe as you think they are. You can't just go on autopilot with all that and just think because they claim to be Christian that they are, or that they're living their life that way. There were churches that I was hearing weren't being the actual church that they're supposed to be, releasing music that isn't biblically sound. And I was just learning all this stuff. And it brought me to this place where I didn't listen to Christian music at all. I didn't listen to worship music at all. I didn't know what to listen to. I didn't feel like it was safe. I didn't feel any of this. Like I just felt really comatose at church. I didn't feel like I could sing the songs because they were from the churches that I had heard were not preaching good doctrine. So at one point during the church service, I just started crying because I felt this overwhelming burden of, I want to worship God, but I don't know how to do that now. And at that point, that was right before season two. I decided to do seasons at that point, and I was like, I want to do something for season two, and I'm going to do a deep dive into Christian music and how we can make this better. So that's one of the reasons why I started doing seasons, is because I was just like, okay, I can't just keep rambling and I can't be inconsistent. What am I going to talk about? And this was the thing that was burdensome on my heart. So that's what I started with. And that's when the podcast just kind of picked up and I realized I like doing this. And then I got hooked up with Podmatch, and that's when I decided, okay, well, I'm going to have people on and we're going to talk. And I want them to have a place where they can share their experiences with the church. Maybe they'll have information on, what the church is doing wrong, what they need to work on, and like just having honest conversations with people. And I would get my chance to ask them questions. And yeah, so it just kind of evolved from there.
Makes sense. It does make sense. The I had a couple other questions lined up, like to follow that one up, and you answered them all. Like boom. I was like, well, that was easy. So that's the only thing about having hosts as guests.
Yes,
you know,
yes. I've heard that before.
you
Yep.
guys just handle all the questions. I mean, honestly, I've had some episodes where it was so easy. I mean, I could have brought a sandwich with me and just sat here and big old meatball sub and just go ahead, go on. Hit
That's
mute, not have been
awesome.
fine. Record. See ya.
Yep.
But no, it was great. Let me, just in the interest of time, let me go ahead and throw in my corny question that I like to ask everybody, because I
All
know
right.
you've been worried about this since I brought it up. But
Yes.
let's end your anxiety now. The corny question that I ask everybody on the show is, when it comes to doing your podcast, what is it about doing your podcast that you love the most? And what is it about doing your podcast that you just absolutely cannot stand, throw it out the window, dislike the most?
Oh, what do I like the most? I think it's a toss-up between interviewing and creating the um, artwork. Creating the artwork has
Wow.
been a thing for me that's it, it's been hard because, like I said, I'm very creative. So I've been really creative. And if anyone has been following all of season five, they've at least up until the episode that just came out in the first week of August. Before that, they were all different. They looked different. They kind of matched with what the topic was. And I love doing that. But I had been hearing from other um, podcast related podcasts that I listen to where they talk about the industry and how to do this, how to do that. And they were saying you got to be consistent, you got to get rid of the creativity. And that was like a are you kidding me? Like I can't do that. And I didn't know what they meant by that, so I asked. And then I was actually featured on a podcast where we were talking about podcasts, and he was asking me about my artwork. And afterwards, we were talking about it, and he mentioned how he liked the artwork, but that if you look at other podcast channels where they're a little more successful, you look at what they're doing with their thumbnails on YouTube. And I looked at that and I was like, yeah, I guess I see what he's talking about. So I made them the way they are now. It's tuned to my colors. It's more of my style. It pops, it's there. And frankly, it's just easier now. Whenever I need to do the artwork, I just swap out the guest, the name, the title, and that's it. It definitely cuts down on a lot of the work. So that, has been better for me, and I enjoy making that now. And I just like making the artwork for anything that I do, for my Facebook posts that I do. I like doing all that, making the shorts that I put on YouTube. I've been working on that as well. So I actually like doing that process. I like recording the episodes and getting to meet new people and hearing their stories. I kind of don't mind editing. It's a lot easier now that Riverside has all those one and
Oh
done
yeah.
type of tools. It was at first, it was irritating. The only thing I don't like about editing is the video part. Because when you're doing audio only, you don't have to care if the video, cuts from one scene to another in some weird, doesn't make sense sort of way. But if you're doing video, you have to watch as you're editing to make sure that it doesn't do that. And I'm like, oh, this stinks. So I don't even know if I want to continue doing video because they don't get seen as often anyways, and I'm not looking to be a YouTuber like that. So I'm still trying to figure out if I wanted to go back to just audio because I just kind of jumped into the whole video thing and I'm like, I'm not sure if I like that. So I guess that would be kind of in the middle of what I do and do not like. But the thing that I really don't like is promoting. I don't like promoting. It is the most irritating thing. I feel like I'm a spammer. I don't know if you've ever seen Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh yeah.
It's like yeah, the guy who walks around with a sign, all the spammer guys who have their signs and everything. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, don't look at them. That's just what I feel like. Whenever I'm putting something out there, I just feel like that's what it is. So I'm trying to figure out a way to promote where I don't feel like I'm being that way. And I haven't been able to do it because I've been, trying to focus on my kids right now. So everything's been on autopilot for the most part. But I'm trying to make my promotional content worth looking at and not just trying to promote it because it's out there. And I'm just trying to find a balance where it's relatable and it doesn't just feel like I just slapped you with a spam email or something, but it's more like you're going to get something out of this. So I've been trying to work on that. And maybe, who knows, maybe it'll go up on the ladder of things I like rather than stay down at the bottom.
Nice. Nice. I got to tell you, I've never had your content come across my feed and been like, ugh,
Yeah.
I mean,
And you know
you
what?
make
It's
good
probably
content.
all in my head. It's
I'm sure it
probably all in
is.
my head because I actually, it's so funny. This is really funny. I was getting frustrated because I felt like nobody was seeing any of my content ever. I was like, are they like keeping me from being seen or something? What is going on here? I was just frustrated because I didn't have that many views or comments or anything. So at some point, I was just having a low moment or whatever. And I just wrote a post that said, I'm sorry if my content comes off as spammy. I just really love what I do, or something like that. I don't remember what it was. That got the most comments, the most likes, the most hearts, the most everything. I was like, what is going on here? That's Is this the kind of stuff they want to hear me talk about? I was like, I don't want to be a sad sack online. I was like, what is this? But yeah, I always thought that was funny. I was like, this one has done better than all my other stuff in a long time. It's weird.
Well, and you're on Facebook, so keep in mind, shadow banning is real on
Oh
Facebook,
yeah.
especially
Yeah.
when you have, a title like you've got on your podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like,
So,
ooh, we can't have any of that.
I mean, honest and Christian, both,
Yeah.
in the same, title.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably on the most wanted list right there.
Probably. And I have heard that if you try to put links to things outside of Facebook, that also does it. I'm like, well, how are people going to listen without having to click on something outside of Facebook? Because at some point, I don't remember when it happened, but they got rid of their feature of having people listen to podcasts on their actual website, which I think was
Yeah.
doing them a disfavor, but whatever. And I'm like, well, how do you keep them on there when you're wanting them to listen to a podcast? And, I've thought about maybe putting the episodes on, like actually on there, but I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And how am I going to know if anyone's listening? Like, there's just so many things that I have to figure out how to make Facebook work for me,
Yeah.
but I don't really like social media. I would love to figure out a better way to do it, but there's no way.
Well, I appreciate your honesty and sharing all of this as always.
Hmm.
And in the interest of time, unfortunately, I gotta bring this back down because I could sit here and talk to you for another hour, about podcasting easily. All right, final question. Get ready. Take a deep breath. Do a little stretch. Get ready to go. Here we go. The What is your best advice for podcasters who are out there who are not quite where you are?
Well, in the interest of being honest, I'm not where I would like to be either. So you have to learn to be content where you are. Something I am still working on is being grateful for whoever's listening. It doesn't matter if it's five, if it's one, if it's none. Maybe they're just not, well, I can't say none because according to Buzzsprout, maybe zero people downloaded an episode for that day. But that doesn't mean that someone didn't hear one of my shorts on YouTube. So I have to have a perspective change of realizing that Buzzsprout doesn't have all that information. Apple doesn't have all that information. Spotify doesn't have it. YouTube doesn't have it. Somebody is listening, and God's word never returns void. So even if it is just one person who's listening, maybe they're listening because I'm in some groups where you can have other people listening to your podcast and you'll get a review, they'll get a review, or the pod lottery with Podmatch. And yeah, like a shout out to my friend Remy Roy, who has a group called Podcast and Grow. She's the one who does the listening parties. The people may be listening and maybe they will not tune in ever again, but they heard that episode. They were encouraged by whatever episode they listened to, and they're going to give me a review, which is a bonus. But the real thing you have to focus on is somebody is listening. Maybe they're not listening to the whole thing. Maybe they only listen to like a few minutes of it, but somebody is listening, and that person is going to get something out of what you have to say. And that has been a thing that I need to continuously remember on the days where I feel low because my numbers are low, and realize it's not about numbers. My pastor says this in general, but I equate it to my podcasting as well. Every number in the seat at church is a person, and that person has a soul, and that soul matters to God. That's what you have to remember with your podcast, whether it's a Christian one or not, whether you believe that spiritually or not. It is true. We all have souls and we all matter to God. Therefore, whatever they're hearing, whatever you're putting out, put out your best and allow God to do the rest with that. And be grateful for whoever's listening, even if it's just one person, your mom, your friend, you know, there's something there for them. And you have to be content with that until you can get to wherever you would be. Because if you're not content with that, why are you going to be content with anything else? You're always going to want more. I mean, I love where I am now, but of course I want to grow. Who doesn't want to grow? No one's going to say, "Oh, no, I don't want to grow anymore." No, we all want to grow. We all
Right.
want to get to where we finally feel like we're there, but we're never going to be there because we're humans and that's just how we are. We're never going to be there. So you got to learn to be content where you are.
That is great advice. I love that piece of advice. That's a fantastic way to wrap us. I really, really love that. All right. Author, podcaster, host of Honest Christian Conversations, Anna Murby. I don't know why I keep calling you Anna.
I know. It's
I,
okay.
I know your
My
name.
guests,
I've
my
talked to you.
guests do it too.
My
My guests
goodness.
do it. And I used to get really irritated with it. I don't anymore. I'm like, it's technically it's right in certain languages.
My sister's name's Ann. and I talked to her over the
That's
weekend,
why.
and I think it's
That's
just in
why.
my head. So, and I apologize.
Maybe you need to call her.
I
Maybe that's why
again.
you keep thinking.
I mean, I already talked to her once. I'm just kidding. All right, Anna Murby. All right, Honest Christian Conversations. You're awesome. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing everything that you did. It was absolutely wonderful. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Folks, it's been another awesome episode of the Podcaster Nation. This is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. That's why we have such fantastic guests on this show. Folks, we proved it again yet today. This is truly the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So keep sailing.